And welcome in, everyone, to Sportsbook Confessions. Time to talk a little handicapping, a little bit of gambling, a little bit of Super Bowl, NCAA basketball. I'm Brady Tinker at DFW Sports Beat alongside my very successful partner, Jeffrey Dawson at EC Sports Invest. Everything went our way. I'm rooting for the Chiefs, and you're telling me, don't forget, Vegas made the Chiefs the favorite the minute the game was up. Then it flipped to Philadelphia. I'm staying on the Chiefs, you said, and I'm staying on the over. And once again, you're picking up where you left off last year, Jeffrey. How's your week been?
We couldn't have done any better if we had Biff's Almanac. I mean, listen, hats off to both teams. It was an amazing Super Bowl, as we were just talking about a minute ago before we went live. If you were backing or rooting for the Eagles, you couldn't have asked for a better first half. I think you were watching Rihanna, probably chilling some champagne at that point, wondering if you were going to the parade. And you couldn't wait for Rihanna to play her 12 songs and then just to get this second half started so you could really begin the celebration. But whatever they did to Mahomes' ankle, listen, Eagles team that had 60 or 70 sacks all season didn't sack Patrick once. He even ran for a big third down, 26 yards. McKinnon goes down at the right spot. Listen, anyone here crying, bitching, yelling, screaming about the call, I will tell you 3 calls that should have went Kansas City's way that didn't. So I don't want to hear it. The better team in the second half and overall for the game won the game. Congratulations, Brady.
Yeah, my neighbor, who I like very much, Philadelphia guy. So obviously I hadn't seen him until this morning, actually. And he said, "Oh, we got screwed." And I said, "Steve, the Chiefs return a kickoff or a punt, 65 yards, set themselves up. They had the only turnover that was, by the way, a scoop and score. They had 2 sacks. Your defense, your vaunted defense, got 0 sacks, 0 turnovers, and the only way the Chiefs are going to win the game in the second half, very similarly to what they did against San Francisco 3 years ago, down 10 at halftime, made some nice adjustments. I thought the Chiefs' adjustments were the best. I think I was texting you a little bit. I mean, it was all Philly in the first half for the most part. I'm with a group of people, and they're like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Well, first, we're just getting beat. But second, Frank Clark was started off extraordinarily selfish. Frank Clark was a very selfish man at the beginning of that game. He's 2 sacks shy of being the all-time record holder for sacks in the playoffs. And twice in the first 2 series, he flies outside up the field, opens a cavern for Hearns to run through on 3rd down, and then Willie Gay blitzed and did the same thing. And I'm like, I promise you, they've had 2 weeks to talk about this. We are going to keep him hemmed in. We are going to make him make big throws. We're going to make him make decisions as much as we can from the pocket, make those running backs beat us. And the running backs weren't beating us, but he did everything right. I thought he played great. I thought some of the throws in both halves that Jalen Hurts made were wonderful. Now, the touchdown was basically a pop-up. It drives me crazy that Chiefs cornerbacks are generally standing right by the man who catches the touchdown because they can't find the ball. That drives me fucking nuts. But that pass was just a pop-up. But he threw huge pass after huge pass through small windows. Goddard caught 2 or 3 that he had no business catching. There was no business throwing them. I mean, they just kept making big play after big play. But, I told you this before. Gil Brandt came down to my TV studio one year and got in my face because I was criticizing Mac Brown, then of University of Texas, and they're very close. And I was during a live show, and he yelled at me and told me I knew nothing about football. Did I know what the number one thing that made coaches great was? And I said, I'm pretty sure I do. It's adjustments. And he was all fired up, and he was like, damn, right. So he wanted to let me know that he thought Mac Brown made good adjustments. And okay, I don't want Gil Brandt to be mad at me. But adjustments were made by the Chiefs in the second half that were much better than anything Philadelphia did. It was obvious. The Chiefs scored on all 4 possessions in the second half. The plays that Andy had drawn up with the wide receivers coming in motion and throwing on the brakes because they had seen that these cornerbacks were passing them, worked for 2 wide open walk-in edge touchdowns in a Super Bowl, which were shocking. And Mahomes, as you said, when he left at halftime, I believe that we can come back. They'll have to play pretty close to a perfect game, which they did in the second half. But how is he? Right, that was the thing, and he didn't look any worse for wear. So I don't know how he does it, but I don't know how he does much of anything that he does. But it was a really good football game. I know Philadelphia fans are disappointed about the call. Probably I would have been too. It had to have put a little salve on everything when Bradbury goes in and says, I held him. I held him twice, hoping I was going to get away with it. And as I understood it, because I was at home watching, there was holding maybe on all three wide receivers as the play developed, that they were really trying to shut down any short routes, and the Chiefs ran a couple of go routes. So made all the difference. But I thought the adjustments were huge, but it was a really good football game.
And I'll talk about 3 calls. Again, I hate the ref game. I stay away from the ref game. I stay away from the drama. Any Eagle fan that wants to bitch, you can at me at EC Sports Events. My DMs are open as well. Third and not second quarter, Juju got raped. And even Mr. Olson, who I can tell you right now, I swear, had money on Philly because he goes, I think they might have missed that one. Second of all, that Goddard catch on the sideline off of his helmet that they did review. Listen, he had possession, and then there was a bobble. And if you then look after the bobble, he didn't get both feet down. That's number 2. And number 3, the second scoop and score, if you look at it, he had 1 foot down, 2 foot down, and turned and made a football move. Get stuck, ball fumble, was a touchdown, Kansas City. Thanks for playing. So again, the calls, listen, it is what it is. Philly, you can go back and try to peel the onions back and say, hey, listen, who was Daniel Jones? San Fran had no quarterback. I said all along, we haven't seen Jalen Hurts have to make a play. In other words, it's easy when there's no pressure and you've got a 10-point lead, a 14-point lead, to zip it into a Goddard, lob it into an A.J. Brown, to a Devontae Smith. Okay? In that first half, it was death by 10,000 paper cuts. They were immaculate on third down. They were amazing on fourth down. Well, KC gets the ball second half, scores. That 10-point lead is a 3-point lead. Philadelphia does not come back and score. And so then game on. And again, the bottom line, you talked about, a lot of the experts are talking about this. Kansas City had to stay in their lanes. And early in, they were rushing. And again, they were over pursuing, and Jalen was finding out he had his holes and stuff. But listen, they're talking about Jalen Hurts, $45 million he's going to want. If I'm Andy Reid, and you got Patrick Mahomes, he is now outpacing the GOAT, Tom Brady. 5 straight championships, 2 Super Bowls, 2 MVPs. But what if I'm Kansas City? I am taking a look back and say, hey, no Tyreek, we're all set. You go as far as a healthy Kelsey does, but you got all these MVSs who didn't nowhere to be found. McCole, Hardman didn't play. Okay, you brought Juju in, who I think is someone that you're going to want moving on. But my whole point here, Kadarius Toney, if he plays, he's a keeper, but there's a wire loose up there. Okay, so I don't think you got to make that big splash. You got Mahomes, you have it, and as long as Andy is there, you guys, I'm telling you right now, you should be in the hunt for the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, you have to give Mahomes credit, and everyone knows I'm a Chiefs fan, but in the offseason, the over and under early on the Chiefs was 9.5 or 10. They certainly weren't going to win the West. The Chargers were going to win the West. Seattle was going to, Denver was certainly going to be better, and the Raiders are going to be better, and maybe all 4 teams make it. A lot of pundits out there saying the Chiefs would not even make the playoffs this year. He took all of that really personally. He also took the failure in Cincinnati's AFC Championship game last year, where he messed up at halftime, begging Andy to go for one more play, and Cincinnati got all the momentum back and came back and won that game. And actually, to be honest with you, he and the head coach owned that, because the truth was, with 5 seconds left, if you remember, Andy's just got to say, "Son, bring your ass over here and sit down. We're going to be up 17 and we get the ball. We're not doing this with 5 seconds." But instead, his buddy, the quarterback, wanted to go, and it turned out to be huge. And really, I have a feeling that there were conversations had that said, we put ourselves in a position where this is a swing point here. Aaron Rodgers only won 1 Super Bowl, and the historian that I am and all the football that we've watched, I thought I hope I'm not here 10 or 12 years from now knowing that the Chiefs went to all these AFC championship games, but that Cincinnati debacle after losing to Tampa 2 years earlier ends up being it. And Pat's got, 7 or 8 or 9 AFC championship games and only one Super Bowl. It will still be a Hall of Fame career, but we're going to look back on literally one play. And I think the two of them and the defensive coordinator and everybody really stayed together. Bieniemy did a great job. And you got to give Mahomes credit. He was phenomenal this year, and he didn't throw an interception in the playoffs. He dropped the one ball in whichever game that was, the Cincinnati game, I think. But other than that, he was almost perfect. And it's not his nature to not gun it, to not try and fit one in, and to give up some interceptions. He just flat didn't do it throughout the playoffs. He trusted the defense would get better, which made my heart palpitate. I thought the Chiefs defense actually was pretty good, other than, over pursuing and getting up the field. Frank just on a full selfish mission. But overall, I at halftime, I was like, we're just getting beat. Now you got to shore up those positions, and then everything else had to go right? They had to score a touchdown. They had to get points, and preferably a touchdown coming out of halftime, because they were also dead on their feet. The defense had played the entire first half. So that was the other thing that was worrying me, was how does a comeback look? Well, it has to look very methodical for the Chiefs offense to give everybody a rest, to get the number of plays sort of back into the right spot. And the truth is, everything went right. And Philadelphia fans, I understand if you'll say everything went right, including, the biggest call of the game. But I also know we've been doing this long enough. You put yourself in a position against a great quarterback, and this has happened to my Chiefs for years, right? Dan Feltz, John Elway, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You give the best player the ball at the end of the game with a couple of timeouts left. I mean, when it was 35-all, I was mortified that the Chiefs had given up 8 points and let that game get tied. On the other hand, I was like, this is what he does. 5 minutes left. You use as much of the clock as you can. You hopefully score a touchdown, but maybe you kick a field goal and you put all the onus on the other team. So had to use their timeouts to try and come back and win. So, I mean, even if the call hadn't gotten made, they're going to get the ball with around a minute 40. They're going to be down 3, and they still have to go do something they really didn't do very well in the second half. They only scored 11 points in the second half. So I thought the adjustments were terrific, and certainly as a Chiefs fan, I'm thrilled. But I think overall, you're not a fan of either one of those teams. It was a great game, wasn't it?
Oh, it was absolutely a great game. It was, I think, everything that you could ask for and more. Going back to that first half, 14-7, Philly driving, 21-7, 17-7. You might start to get nervous, but,
Right.
then the one little blip and the scoop and score there.
How perfect was that, too? If you're a Chiefs fan, first of all, he panicked, right? There was a blitz, something he didn't think he was going to see. Ball slips out of his hand. That ball goes boink, 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 and bounces up as if an angel said, you don't have to bend over, buddy. Just reach your hands down. It's going to, on the run, scoop and score. Oh, my gosh. It was just like they practice in drills in high school. Doink, doink, doink. Oh, I got it. It was perfect. If you're a Philly fan, you're like, how does that bounce happen?
I have to ask this to you, and I was asked this tonight, and I gave my point of view. We have talked live, and we have talked off air about Coach Reed and Eric Bieniemy, and the fact of the matter is, the NFL is taking some hits about hiring black coaches and black coaches being passed over, yada yada yada, and my question you've told me is that maybe Andy and Eric aren't seeing eye to eye like they used to. It was kind of like Bill and Tom and Bill and Josh. At some point, it starts to get a little stale and old here. And then hearing the rumblings that, Eric was in Washington for an OC job, and then, absolute lateral move, and no quarterback over there. And then, you got the dream job here with Andy, and then with Patrick. And then one thing that popped into my head, and this is just my thought, Brady, is he not doing well? There's got to be more to this story than him not being able to get a head coaching job at this point.
I think, first of all any wounds were healed with this season. I think everybody really came together this season. Everybody, Eric was not buying much of the blame for the debacle in the AFC Championship game. He was screaming for Mahomes to get off the field. He was screaming to take the 3 points, which everyone else in the world was too. That was a colossal fuck up by both Mahomes and Andy Reid, and they both know it, and they owned it. And Bieniemy got back together, and I mean, it was a terrific season for Kansas City, who ended up playing 3 rookies in the secondary. They had very little at the wide receiver position. They were running with an all-time quarterback and an all-time tight end, and a head coach who can call plays like nobody's business, and a patchwork defense that kind of got better. I mean, they didn't really rush the passer very well, but Chris Jones was phenomenal. Those 2 linebackers were good, and all the kids in the secondary were good enough. Good enough. But I think that's all healed. What I hear about Bieniemy is he doesn't interview very well. And so you've seen, he and Patrick go head to head. So I think there's something, and I don't know this, but from what I've told, there's something a little abrasive about Bieniemy. And when Bieniemy gets onto a point, he's right, and he doesn't care what you think. And you need to shut the F up and listen and do what you say. And he's not combative with him like that anymore. He just, gives him credit and stays away from it. I was surprised that Bieniemy came back last year just because it was kind of 2 years in a row where he and Pat went head to head. And I'm like, well, how much longer is that going to last? Plus, they brought the old Bears coach back, whoever I'm thinking of, right, who could step in as Andy's OC. So all of that seemed to say Bieniemy's out, but then he's back again. So I assume everyone's coming back again. I mean, I wouldn't think you change anything. That may have been, in many ways, the most pristine year the Chiefs have had in a long time, because they were up against some things. It was a difficult schedule. The division, while it wasn't, looked like it was going to be brutal. And for them to have come through all that, and then Mahomes get hurt, in the first quarter of the first playoff game, they overcame almost everything. So I think that was pretty good stuff. I'm glad Andy's not leaving. There were rumors that if we won, Andy was going to retire, but he's not. So I think he's looking at this saying, we get 3 of these things, maybe another one next year or the year after, and it's historic. It's historic for him and for Patrick and for everybody else. So, and also a position people don't give a shit, but it's a position Chiefs fans haven't been in. If you're a fan of other teams and you really don't know or care about Kansas City, they won their first Super Bowl in 1969-70, and go look at the picture of Len Dawson smoking a Cool and drinking a Fresca on the sideline, and Henry Stram matriculating the ball down the sideline with Otis Taylor beating a Minnesota team that was overrated. And then it was 57 years before Kansas City people got another Super Bowl. So this isn't some area that the Chiefs fans have been in for a long time. Marty Schottenheimer brought lots of wins and lots of heartache in the playoffs. There have been some really good players, but nothing like this. So Chiefs fans, and I count myself as one of those, have been very lucky to all those through the years who have gotten that quarterback. We never had that quarterback. We had Joe Montana, but at age 35, 36, right at the end of his career, and he got him to the AFC Championship game, which was terrific. But it was an odd feeling. I mean, he wasn't our player, nor was Marcus Allen our running back. There were some oddities there. So I'm happy for Chiefs fans who are good fans. That's a frigid, cold stadium that gets extraordinarily loud. Those are really, really good fans that are proud of themselves for affecting games week to week, and they're getting false starts and stuff like that. So for a little town to have this going on, I'm happy and I'm proud of my town.
And the other thing that I was going to say is you got your number one bell cow running back with Mr. Pacheco for a few more years too.
I would imagine, we watch a lot of NFL. I imagine that lives about 3 years at the longest,
Yes.
because he runs into everything he sees. He gets up like he just did a line, and he's going to take on anyone who's in front of him with a quick left and a right. But he's fun to watch. And it was, Andy doesn't like to run the ball ever. But they ran for 158 yards in that game, and they outrushed a Philadelphia team that was number 1 in the NFL in rushing by a mile. So, their running backs didn't get anything done. Sanders, I imagine, is probably not on that team next year. That's why I think we've seen more of Gainwell. So, and we'll talk a little bit about fantasy before we leave today. But Gainwell probably moves up some charts. He really got some run in the playoffs, and he's a good-looking running back. They'll go with the committee, but Gainwell's probably a good 6th-round pick next year. Guessing that they draft another running back, because I think Sanders is probably gone. So Philadelphia's a good team. They'll be back. I told everybody before the game, I think Philadelphia's probably got 5 more good players than the Chiefs do. But the Chiefs have Mahomes and Reid, and we'll see what happens. And it was just phenomenal. It really was.
No, again, an instant classic. It was I'm not going to use a tale of two halves because it wasn't like Philly just folded the tent in the
Yeah,
second
no,
half.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
You know, get down 8. You know, get the touchdown, get the 2-point conversion, and again, probably, you know, I know injuries was a big cause because a couple of years ago, Mr. Harrison Butker was one of the best, if not the best, kickers in the game. He was injured this year. He was so inconsistent. Andy could not.
And do you know where Harrison Butker got injured? That's all right.
In Arizona.
That's exactly right. Week 1 in Arizona on that same field on a kickoff. Plant foot, he runs up, plant foot slides 1.5 feet, takes a piece of turf this wide. He misses 2 weeks, and really he adjusted everything all through the season. He was good, he was bad, he had his issues. They had the holder was different in the last couple of years, so he had his issues on getting the ball in the right spot. And Butker wasn't bad by any means, but he wasn't great. And all of that started in Arizona on that same damn field. And if there was anything embarrassing, I was worried Carl Sheffers was going to be embarrassing, but he wasn't. But the field was an embarrassment to the league. That field that is, I've seen it. Have you been there? They grow the grass in trays, literally outside, and then they move them in and get them in, 3-4 days in advance and get all the seams set and everything else. It's something else to watch. I've been for a couple of Super Bowls there, and it's something else to watch them bring this stadium in pieces and trays. But it's all supposed to be absolutely perfect, and it was awful, and it was awful from week 1. I don't know how this league does some of the things that it does. Just like you said, it was a catch and it was a fumble. I was sitting with a bunch of people, and everyone's like, "What's going to happen?" I'm like, "It's going to be an incomplete pass. He has to take 6 steps and call his mom. It's not a catch." And I was like, "But it is a catch." I'm like, "You're missing the point." I know it's a catch. You know it's a catch, but the NFL's rule book has gone from this in 1982 to this, where we need 4 people in the booth to explain to Romo exactly what happened because no one knows what happened. They're killing their own game, yet the 3rd most watched Super Bowl in the history of the NFL. So it was a lot of fun. The Final Four this year, as we know, Jeffrey, let's talk about a few more NFL things, was Chiefs, Eagles, Niners, Bengals. In my estimation, certainly the 4 best teams. And if you were Dallas, who I cover here, I've done several shows on Off of the Helmets with you saying, listen, you got to be honest. Your team isn't as good as those 4 teams. It's not as good at executing. It's not as well coached, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't do it. Final 8 is great. But to get to be these teams that are the Final 4 teams for a chance to play in the Super Bowl, as up and down as the league goes because of the salary cap, you have to be really good. So Final 4 this year, Chiefs, Eagles, Niners, Bengals. Too bad the Niners' 6th quarterback got hurt. What an unbelievably wonderful season they had, motoring through quarterback 1, 2, and getting to 3. You have to give a tip of the hat to them. We all missed out on probably what would have been a great game, Eagles-Niners, if Purdy had been able to stay upright. And so those are the top 4, and they were the best 4. Add the Bills, Cowboys, Jags, and Giants, and that was your final 8. So I like where those teams are going. I almost wonder if the Bills are sliding a little bit. I almost wonder if Diggs isn't there next year, and are there some things that are happening? On the other hand, I still think the Bills quarterback is phenomenal unless his body just can't take the beating. So I like those 4 teams as well. I'm not certain what I think about the Cowboys. I think the Jaguars are on their way up, but it could be a hiccup thing. So other teams that I added could make Final 8. Ravens. I'm going to assume Lamar ends up with the Ravens. They're always a Final 8 type team with that defense and with Lamar. I don't know what's going to happen with the Dolphins. We all suffered together through Tua and the head injuries and being fathers that you and I are that killed us. The Chargers get a new offensive coordinator. The Broncos get Sean Payton. The Vikings, you had from the beginning of the year, had a phenomenal season. And then the Jets and the Lions were the 2 teams we had the most fun watching that were young. I think the arrow is pointed up for both those teams, and they'll draft in good positions. And then the Packers, if Rodgers stays. So did I miss anybody there who might be playoff-type teams?
You missed my Patriots. No, first of all, they're not my Patriots, so let's get that straight. No, what some interesting decisions is after the 4 days of darkness, does Rodgers come back to Green Bay or does he go to, say, the Jets
Right.
and make them a contender? I'm hearing D Hop to the Titans. Well, they still don't have a quarterback. Uh, Ravens, we are franchising Lamar, but we're taking offers. TJ, if the Dolphins was to sign Lamar Jackson tomorrow, I'll go and get you the jersey, okay? Because that would make them instant contenders in that East. You're spot on with the Dolphins because we all bought the. I bought the sizzle.
Sure.
I bought it in August. Hey, we're going through Buffalo. They're going to go to Arizona. This is the year. Whether it was the Hamlin situation, whether it was, they had some hiccups, uh, some cracks in the armor with Allen. They don't have a true running game. There is so much to wonder what's going on there. But I think you're spot on. The NFL, it's funny. They want to get the Super Bowl to this Sunday. So on Monday, it's a national holiday, and they're just adding one more game and one more bye week to get it there. They're this close. They're this close to get it because then they go to the combines and then they go to the draft
Right.
and then they go to the OTAs and they
But
never miss a beat.
there
They'll
is
never
no
miss
downtime. There is
one.
no downtime. It's the greatest league in the world in terms of it's a weekly game. It shows up on Sunday. There probably are too many. There's too many Thursday games for the most part. You could pare that back for me. The Saturday games as you approach the holidays, I guess I'm okay with. Their rule book is a problem. And I swear to God, you could just say, you know what, go grab me the 82 rule book and pass it around. And we're going back to that. And I would much prefer that. And the games would be faster. So I don't get why they don't do that. I don't get why they don't have full-time officials all the time. I've always been one who said, listen, anybody who played college level football at whatever, division 1, 2, 3, whatever it may be, or had a cup of coffee in the NFL or the USFL or any other indoor arena football league, get them in, try them out, make them go to school, and pay them $500,000 a year to be full-time officials, and at least have people on the field for the NFL making calls who understand athletically and intellectually exactly how the game is played. Because what we've got is a bunch of you and me, Jeff. We got a bunch of 55 and 60-year-old white guys who were wannabe athletes when they were kids, who have now studied and studied and studied to learn the rule book. But what they're missing is the game. They're missing the game, and I just think if you get young people, young-ish people who played the game at a high level, who have an appreciation for the game of football and how it's supposed to be played, and angles that tackles happen on, and when holding really is holding, and et cetera, and all that stuff, the game would be better. And then pare the rule book back. And for a league that has unlimited money, I mean, what is this league worth? It's probably worth about $50 billion. It may be more than that. It's incredible. And they still don't have full-time officials. It's incredible. Also the idea of, as the playoffs go along, we don't use crews, right? So the point there is Carl Sheffers has a group of whatever it is, 10 other guys that go with him everywhere, and they travel around, and then they get rated, but they get rated individually. So in the Super Bowl, people may not know this, Carl Sheffers was the head guy, but he's not working with his crew. He's working with 10 other people that he doesn't know. That doesn't make any sense either. I know you want to reward these guys for doing well statistically, but it doesn't make any sense. Give them money. Give them a hug. Send them a candygram. But fuck changing this thing and running 11 or 12 different officials out there who don't even know each other, led by Carl Sheffers, who calls more penalties than anybody in the history of the league for the last 8 years. None of it makes any sense. None of it makes any sense. And for the perfect game that happens in the perfect manner, that gets the greatest ratings and makes the most money, how can you be fucking up your own game? It mystifies me.
All the millions and bazillions of dollars that they spend on the extra cameras, the reviews, it just came to me is the fact, again, it does add more commercials for them, which is obviously more dollars. But I was the guy that says, yes, I want to see this. Hey, we want perfection. Well, when, go back to Des Bryant, go back to Calvin Johnson, go back to the game has been ruined. So all the bazillions of dollars that they're spending, get rid of it. Go back to, we're playing on the field with athletes that are I mean, 6'8", running, 4.340s. I mean, listen, if you're going to have Brady Tinker and Jeff Dawson on the sidelines and you're paying us a stipend, we're going to call it the way we see it. And that's the way the game should be called. Okay. So I'm going to bring this up for the last time in 2023. Okay. And the penalty, because it goes with what we're talking about here. Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. Okay. The reason the flag was thrown was because Mahomes saw the hold not once but twice and just threw the ball to the pylon.
Exactly right.
Like Aaron Rodgers, when he sees a guy trying to run off the field, what does he do? He takes the snap. When he sees the hold, he throws the throws the ball because they're going to throw the flag. That's the brilliance of elite quarterbacks.
You're right.
Okay. So in other words, take it out of their hands. Okay, take these reviews, these 5, 6, 8-minute reviews. I mean, because they still don't get them right.
Well, and I like how they're patting themselves on the back. We're doing this, whatever they call it, right? Where we have the speed up calls, where we realize it was a shitty call, so it's still going to take us 38 seconds to fix a shitty call. Way to go! And I hear them say it, and I'm like, I think they want a pat on the back. I'm having trouble with that. Great season though. Early 2023 fantasy football risers. Okay, so guys who were rookie types or second-year types who got their opportunity. As you and I go to Las Vegas or sign up for all these fantasy leagues that we do, Kenneth Walker certainly rises. Khalil Herbert is one that people may not be thinking of. 5.7 yards per carry for Khalil Herbert. Montgomery gone in Chicago. That was really a breakout year on what will certainly be a running team. I mean, either he's going to run it or he's going to run it. Travis Etienne, Breece Hall, CD Lamb. It took me a while to get there. I know he was drafted in most of the leagues that you did as a number one. I did not draft him as number one. I didn't think he was ready to be a number one. And for 7 weeks, he wasn't. And then he was. And he took to heart coaching. He took to heart some film that he was shown where he would run her out and the ball was underthrown. And instead of tackling the guy who intercepted, he'd gesture like he was, a pristine high school kid who just was pissy all the time. And then he grew up. So I do think CD Lamb gets there. Garrett Wilson comes close. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tony Pollard, and Damian Pierce were names I wrote down for certainly risers and guys who probably will help you win your championship next year. And they might be randomly 3rd and 4th round picks.
And the Breece Hall is very enticing. I was not on the Breece Hall train, and we're sitting here, we're watching, and I think he went in that 3-4 turn. I was looking at shopping at other lanes, and then I started watching him, and then I really started watching him. I'm like, holy shit, this kid is good. And then he got injured. Kenneth Walker is someone that I really, really like. Watching him play, holy shit, he is good. Travis Etienne, who our buddy Sean Childs is in love with this gentleman and had him rated real, real high. The problem is they don't throw it to him like they should. I don't get it. This guy should get 25, 30, 40 catches a season. He doesn't. It'll be interesting to see there. You talk about wide receivers, and you talked about Wilson in New York. Another one, depending upon quarterbacks, I like the kid in New Orleans, Olave. He had a good year. He started to make the strides. I like that. I will give everyone next year's Jalen Hurts. You always want to find, because the way my eyes saw, and I talked to some colleagues, I was like, shit, Jalen Hurts might be the first quarterback taken in our fantasy leagues over Josh Allen, over Patrick Mahomes. People will sit back and wait for Herbert or Mr. Burrows. Yeah. But next year's Jalen Hurts will be Trevor Lawrence. Now, again, as the season progressed, he got more comfortable with Peterson and the offense. He started to run more. He has Evan Ingram. He has Kirk. They will add Calvin Ridley now to that mix. They will throw the ball more to Travis Etienne. So if you're going to sit back and wait a little on a quarterback, Trevor Lawrence will be next year's hopeful Jalen Hurts. And last but not least, a little rumor the last 2 days locally. And if they pull this one off, it will be a shocker. I know T. Higgins is available. Listen, if I'm the Bears, I'm going to make that one move down. I'm going to gather up some more picks. I'm calling up Cincinnati. I'm getting T. Higgins, and that's my number one. That is A.J. Brown 2.0 to what Philly did. Okay, but keep an eye on this one. Debo Samuel to the Patriots. Rumor has it that if the price is right, you still got him for a couple years. He could be available. And let's just say we're poking the bear around here in New England with Bill O'Brien coming in as the new OC for the Patriots with Mac Jones, who Mac Jones now taught Bill O'Brien the system at Alabama, not vice versa. So it's going to be interesting.
D-Hop rumors in Kansas City and Dallas as well. His contract is 18.5 next year, and then only 13.5 the year after. The year after was built on incentives that by virtue of being hurt and or suspended, he didn't come anywhere near making in the first 2 years of this 4-year run. So D-Hop at 19 or whatever it is and 13, when you know the best wide receivers next year are going to make 32, is a pretty good sounding number. Now, certainly he has slowed down, but he runs great routes. He catches every pass, and offenses that are already set that could use D-Hop. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. And what are the rumors about Diggs that I'm hearing out of Buffalo? Now, Diggs isn't a free agent, so what is that?
No, I just think it was a bad ending. And again, once they lost that game to the Bengals, he basically ran off the field. Yeah, he basically was running out of the locker room. They had to bring him back. I think there was some turmoil late in the season. Again, I feel for the Bills because just the way the season ended again and the tragic accident on the field, injury. I apologize there. Injury. Everything's fine now. It just threw this team so out of whack. They do need to sit down and address the running back situation. Listen, I think Singletary's good. I think, but the Cook kid, James Cook, will be your feature back moving forward.
There's another one we probably should put on the list.
Yes. Defensively showed some holes. Listen, you talked about the AFC here now. You guys, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs should be on the mantle, okay? But you know, when you're talking about the likes of Josh Allen, you're talking the likes of Mr. Burrows, you're talking the likes of Herbert. We haven't even said Lamar Jackson.
Right.
You know, the AFC is just so loaded, and the NFC now. Don't forget, Tom has now left the building. We don't know if Aaron has left the building.
Right.
You know, so there's a lot of holes in that NFC. So you don't just have to be good in the AFC. You need that star-studded quarterback that you can put your hat on and feel comfortable. Again, that's why if I'm the Dolphins, I don't want to be worrying week to week. Can Tua play this week? Can he not play this week? I want to make sure that I can put my hat on someone. That's why I talk about Lamar to Miami.
Okay, agreed. Let's go to NCAA hoops Saturday because we are here live on Thursday night later in the evening, and there are hardly any games that anybody wants to watch on Friday. So we're jumping ahead to Saturday. Tell me about Georgia playing better at 16-10, traveling to number 1 Alabama. Bama's 22-4. I straight up watch Bama, and they score 83 points a game. Georgia scores 70. Bama gets 41 rebounds. Georgia gets 30. Points per game allowed is the same, 68.8, so that doesn't bode very well for the underdog. And Bama coming off a loss at Tennessee on Wednesday night, probably sitting loaded for bear. So Dave Sherpin used to hate it when I would say, this one seems easy.
This Alabama team, I always say live by the 3, die by the 3, but they've been battle tested down this road for a couple years now. If you don't have them somehow in your portfolio making a long run come March, shame on you. I'm not saying the price is right here, Bob Barker, but this team is, you know, I think Ken Palm's got them at 19-point favorites to win this game. A Georgia team. This would be a great football game in the SEC. This is an absolute snoozer. Again, if Alabama comes in with that Olay affair, maybe it ties one on Friday night with the kids, couple keg parties, a couple dancing girls or something, maybe a little flat Bama, but this is business as usual. Roll Tide.
Over and under 149. I'm sorry I didn't kick that out to you. Their points per game are 83 and 70. That sits at 153. So pretty good number. OU, not very good, 13 and 13. They did get a nice win the other day against Kansas State. They are traveling to Austin, Texas, take on the number 6 ranked Texas Longhorns, who are 20 and 6. Longhorns lost to Texas Tech on Monday, 74-67. They do have wins over ranked Baylor and K-State. And the line here is UT minus 10 at home, over and under 144.
Very disappointing Oklahoma team this year. Can't get a good read on them. Have picked our spots. It was kind of funny. They were set for a great win. I think it was on Saturday. They got their doors blown off. And I called back to a couple colleagues. I says, okay, it's time to get back on them. And then they rolled there. This Texas team, I applaud them. What went on with Chris Beard, and the fact is they didn't miss a beat. Yeah, they had a few hiccups. They're rolling. I saw today that actual case is going to get dropped now. Right. They don't have enough evidence. So, again, Chris Beard won't probably coach next year either, but maybe the year after someone will, bring him back. Again, another team that can make a deep run in March is this Texas team. They do have hiccups. They do have brain farts like a lot of these teams. But that number of 10 it smells a little to me. I think Texas wins. I could see Oklahoma with a backdoor cover. Late 3, it lands on 8 or 9 or something.
Number 10, Tennessee at Kentucky, the game of the week. Big win for Tennessee over Alabama on Wednesday. Forced 19 turnovers. That Tennessee team turned up the D. Kentucky, the Wildcats did beat the Volunteers earlier, January 14th, 63-56. And Calipari's squad sort of getting going. This is what we sort of get used to from him. He's always got so many new kids. It takes them a while to get everything in the row. This one is Kentucky getting 4 points at home still against number 10, Tennessee. And the over and under, Jeffrey, is 134 from Ken Palm.
Saturday, January 14th, Kentucky coming in off of a 2-game losing shocks Tennessee at home, 63-56. I think it was by about 13 that game, and they couldn't throw it in the ocean. This Tennessee team does that. And then all of a sudden now, this is a kind of one of these funny revenge spots, number one, now for Tennessee. And secondly, it's kind of one of those must wins again for Kentucky. They're 17-9. I think Joe Lunardi and a few other people have them outside looking in. If you look at their resume since the 28th, they lost to Kansas, they beat Mississippi and Florida, then they lose to Arkansas, they lose to Georgia, and they just snuck out a win last night to Mississippi State by 3. And then I'm just going to quickly pull Tennessee is another team that can go a long, long way in this tournament if they don't have the offensive brain farts. But go back to February 1st. Lost to Florida. They beat Auburn. Then they lose to Vanderbilt. I think they were 18-point favorites. And then they lose to Missouri, and they were like 17-point favorites. They beat Bama at home. Big win for them Wednesday by 9. I think Tennessee finds a way. I think they get the revenge factor. Will Kentucky keep it close? Absolutely. Again, it's two teams with two different senses of urgency. I'm going to go Tennessee wins, Kentucky covers.
Okay, excellent. All right, buddy, that's what I got this week. It was fun. It was a great Super Bowl, very good season. I enjoyed doing this with you very much. We're going to gather ourselves here for a month or two and come back and get started early in the season talking about fantasy and all the opportunities to bet on the NFL. Let's dabble in some baseball at the end of the season as well.
Listen, I can't wait here. I feel like new shoes. We should sing a little I can't wait. WBC coming around the corner, spring training, something about grapefruits and cactuses, and potentially in March the Bellagio for the NFBC, the Masters. around the corner. I mean, listen, let's put the football and pigskin on the shelf and leave it there.
Just for a little while.
Oh, and I think there's this race on Sunday called the Daytona 500, which, the one time a year, it's nice to sit back, have a little something on a few, and we'll be ready.
Eldrick Woods limped his ass out to the first tee at Riviera today and shot 2 under as well. So that was fun to watch. Lots going on. By the way, I'll do an off of the helmets for East Coast Sports Investors tomorrow at 4. So that lots of Cowboys things going on. Is Tony Pollard staying or going? Looks like maybe franchise tagged. They will probably make Zeke a post June 1st cut. Big things happening there. They signed a defensive line coach today that I thought was interesting. Did you see that?
No.
It was a kid that played at Florida when Dan Quinn was there, and I'm forgetting his name, but he was a first-round draft pick. So they're going full bore, are the Cowboys, in the same direction they've been going, only they're going to change the offense up a little bit. And you mentioned the next Jalen Hurts. The next Jalen Hurts Cowboys fans hope is Dak Prescott, because the Cowboys are talking now that Dak Prescott may get 8 to 10 carries a game. Leg looks like it's fully healed, and let's face it, he doesn't read defenses all that well. We're going to make this thing quicker, 3-step drops, and we're going to let him run the ball more, and let's get something out of this $250 million contract. So we'll see. But all that tomorrow at 4 Central on Off of the Helmets, talking Cowboys.
I just want to ask, with Pollard potential franchise tag, you had a kid back there that was quick as lightning when you gave him the ball. I don't know if it was the Rook or not. I'm not talking about Zeke. Yeah. So are you trying to tell me that Dak is capable of running an RPO, or is this just going to be, look left, look right, and run?
No, they're talking about RPOs. Jerry was insistent on this actually, maybe week 12. He came out and told us, I guarantee you, as this thing goes forward this season into next, Dak Prescott is going to be a much, much bigger part of the Cowboys running game. Now, when he said that, I was on with you saying he still doesn't think his leg is right? It wasn't the hand, it was the leg. But by the time he got to the last 4 or 5 games of the season, even though he threw a lot of picks, he was back to being 100% healthy and strong Dak Prescott. And I think the Cowboys sort of feel like, listen, we're trying to win a Super Bowl here. We're not going to protect him anymore next year. He's not fantastic at reading defenses. He's in there as a 12 to 15 quarterback. Got heart, leads people. But one of the things that he does do very well, and he did very well his first couple of years in the league, is run the football. He's big and strong and hard to get down. So, yeah, we're talking RPOs. We're talking 8 to 10 carries a game for Dak Prescott on purposeful runs, not just scrambles or, oops, I see a man-to-man defense, I can go get 5 yards. We're talking about Dak Prescott running the football. So,
and the outlook in the NFC, when you think about it, the NFC South is trash. There's no quarterbacks left in the NFC South. And then you move over to the North, and we, again, don't know what's up with Rodgers. Another year older for the kid in Minnesota, which everyone wants to move on from. And then you got Justin Fields, which the rumors are really swirling that Chicago is shopping him. They are shopping him, and they might take a shot with Bryce Young if the price is right and they'd move on from Justin. So you might just be competing with the Eagles, the Giants, and the NFC West, and you can just take Arizona out of that mix. So there's only a handful of teams. I know it's early, but as a Dallas fan, and looking inside like you do, you got to be sitting there and smiling.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about Malik Davis, by the way, the other Cowboys running back. They do not see him as anything other than maybe that third guy who gets, if you run with a trio, that gets 2 or 3 touches a game, probably more next year than he got this year, but I think it was a total of 60 carries this year. So they don't see him. I don't see them elevating him. If they put a franchise tag on Pollard, they'll make Malik Davis number 2. I think they'll look for another veteran. If in the end Malik Davis's young legs are better and he learns the offense and picks up the blitzes, then maybe. Yeah.
Well, and again, I keep saying this, and it's not going to happen. But if you were to land a Hopkins and the Texas running back ever slid to you, you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. And I know you don't draft running backs in the first round, okay? And this kid's pretty special. If you haven't looked at it, Go watch some tape from the Texas Longhorns this year. The kid can run. I mean, I'm not calling him Earl Campbell. I'm not calling him Ricky Williams, but the kid's a monster.
There's no doubt about that. The issue is, and what Jerry's going to suffer through here in thinking about doing that is they went through this with Zeke. They drafted Zeke in the first round. And what happens is when you draft a running back in the first round, it's a 5-year contract, not a 4-year contract. So what those guys do is they play 2 good first years and they hold out in year 3 because they ain't letting you get to year 4 and 5 because nobody gives anybody who's played 4 or 5 years with 300 carries a year a new contract in the NFL. And that's not going to change. Matter of fact, there were statistics everywhere about all the teams that were in the playoffs for the last 20 Super Bowl winning teams. The highest paid running back in the last 20 Super Bowl winning teams is like $2.5 million a year. You just, there's nothing statistically that says pay running backs. And interesting though, I bet people don't know this. Do you know how many yards per carry NFL teams averaged this year? We all felt the uptick. 126.1. That is the most. That's every team in the NFL average. Now they didn't, but you understand that the average of 32 teams in the NFL, it was 126.1 yards per game because you're seeing nothing but 2 deep. You're seeing shell coverage. So there's not enough guys to block what's up here in front of you. The average yards per carry in the NFL this year for every team and every running back was 4.5 yards per carry. That number hasn't been done since ever. The highest yards per carry run ever. So that's not going to change. There are only a couple of teams that could even do something different. The Bills tried and it didn't work for them. The Chiefs got away with it, but they actually ended up using a hard-ass young kid at key times in the playoffs. So teams are going to run next year. And let's part with this for them. As you begin to think about fantasy, do you think about that? Do you think more runs? Well, more running backs. Therefore, the wide receivers at the top are still almost universally more valuable. How do you look at that as we part here with Sportsbook Confessions?
I have successfully been able to land the big yellow stickers, the wide receivers, and then look for 1 or 2 of those backs, pass catching backs. This year, we put our dynamic duo. We hit 1 out of 2. We had Ramondre Stevenson, but we tied him with A.J. Dillon, and A.J. didn't get it going until December. We got very lucky with Miles Sanders and Gainwell, and we got very lucky with Kenneth Walker with Rashard Penny. And so I look for pass catching backs. If you're picking up front, you put your hat on a McCaffrey, and that's going to be we'll close right here with this one. If you got the first pick next year, okay, look back. When's the last time a starting running back lasted the whole season for the 49ers? Yeah. As good as McCaffrey look back last year, the year before that, they always get injured. Never mind, you went through 3 or 4 quarterbacks. So my question is, do you take McCaffrey? Do you take Justin Jefferson? Some people will say Saquon Barkley, who made it through 1 year. I ain't getting the banana in the tailpipe here. No, hey, God bless you with that. Top coming off an injury. My whole point is CMC, or do you take Justin Jefferson? I'm taking Justin Jefferson, but that's for another show, sir.
Not going to make a decision on San Francisco until I know who the quarterback is, too, because it looks like Garoppolo's not going to be there. Do we really believe it's Trey Lance or Purdy? Do we really believe? Because that's the conversation now. As they start next year with Trey Lance and Purdy vying over who's the starting quarterback in San Francisco. I'll believe it when I see it. They might do it, though.
Elvis Gerback.
Mm-hmm. All I know is he ended up in Kansas City, and it wasn't any fun for us. I'll leave you with this right here. Love you, buddy. Congrats. Enjoyed it very much. Enjoyed the season. We'll let everybody know when we're getting back and off of the helmets talking massive Cowboy shit. Whether you love them or hate them, I'm all over it for you tomorrow at 4 Central right here. Off of the helmets, courtesy of East Coast Sports Investors.